Welcome to Horizons of Thought. My name is Donald Derrick, and today I'm going to talk about some of the philosophies of Carl Jung. Carl Jung, along with the other psychoanalysts of the early 20th century, wrote their theories of the human mind in terms of religious metaphor. Their theories were meant to give people who already had a thorough grounding in comparative religion a set of shared tools to describe patterns of behavior that they have observed. I will therefore be providing a highly simplified version of Jung's ideas, shaped as they are by my own beliefs and my way of talking. In Jung's analysis, human minds have various aspects, from the most conscious to the most unconscious. Our persona is the mask our egos make to impress others or ourselves and to protect ourselves from the world. Our ego is the mediator between our projected persona and our true self. This ego presents this persona both to the world and our true selves. Our persona is also our outward tool for subduing primitive urges, impulses, and emotions of making ourselves respectable. It is very useful, but it can be harmful if we fail to distinguish between our true selves and the persona. Our personas will protect us from connecting to the shadow. If we live in the persona too long and too deeply, we will fail to distinguish our true selves from our personas. This can result in a shallow, brittle, conformist kind of personality, which is all persona, with its excessive concern for what people think. Such a person will sacrifice him or herself not because they are saintly, but out of cowardice, of fear of facing their true selves. And you cannot get past this subservience to your persona if you do not admit that your true self connects to a darker self, the shadow. Our shadow includes our sexuality, spontaneity, aggression, instincts, cowardice, carelessness, passion, and enthusiasm, love of material possessions. The shadow embraces all these sins, dark thoughts, and moods for which we felt guilt and shame. It is part of who we are, but since we often keep it down so far within us, it can have autonomy in our unconscious mind. When you lie to yourself about your desires, those desires live outside of what you can directly observe. If we do not incorporate the shadow into ourselves, bringing our shadows to our consciousness, we project it onto others and deny it in ourselves. A man who is unconscious of himself, Jung writes, acts in a blind, instinctive way and is in addition fooled by all the illusions that arise when he sees everything that he is not conscious of in himself coming to meet him from outside as projections upon his neighbor. In times of attack on our ego and persona, we can rage the precise faults of others that most closely match the faults in ourselves. Only by observing our resentment towards ourselves and others, and by considering the moral aspects of our behavior, can we bring the shadow into consciousness and have any opportunity of strength and independence. This failure to incorporate the shadow normally only hurts us individually or people within our small groups, making us into useless or even violent people, normally. But we are currently in an apocalypse. We associate the word apocalypse with destruction, but an apocalypse actually refers to a forcible revelation of things that were once hidden. Apocalypses reveal our inner nature, but they do so quickly without letting us have conscious awareness of that nature. Apocalypses do this by tapping into what Jung called our collective unconscious. This collective unconscious is built upon our shared experiences of humanity, written into our DNA, the proteins we inherited from our mother's eggs, and our historical social experiences. During the pestilence portion of this apocalypse, which appears to be switching gears to the famine portion, we have regularly encountered our collective fears of death and power. Fear of death is the fear of disease and disability, and of straight up dying. We all know what plagues, pandemics, have meant in human history. The Black Plague from 1347 to 1351 killed between 75 and 200 million people in Europe. The 1918 flu pandemic killed 17 to 100 million people, much more than World War I. HIV has killed at least 36.2 million people so far. COVID killed far fewer as a percentage of humanity, at about only 0.22% of us. However, COVID is now the fifth largest plague in recorded history, having killed somewhere between 6 and 23 million people. Now combine this underlying fear of disease with the incessant news coverage of COVID. Consider the amount of effort our governments, the media, and all of us through our interactions have put into making COVID continuously visible. And with that, you can see how all of this taps into our fear of ancient horrors, fear on a Lovecraftian scale. Yet fear of death is not the only fear in our collective unconscious, tapped by this apocalypse. We are afraid of power and the misuse of the same. Fear of misused power is the fear of deception by governments and large corporations, fear of authoritarian control, and fear of the wars they bring. War is worse than hell. The Mongol conquests killed 30 to 57 million people, about 1/10 of humanity at the time. It was so terrifying that we are still cleaning up the mess more than 600 years after it ended. The political structures of the Middle East, China, India, and the Orthodox world, even as they exist today, were built to prevent another Mongol conquest. World War II, with its horrific Holocaust, battles, and mass starvations, killed 70 to 118 million people, lasting 6 years and a day. The entire Western world order exists to prevent another world war. These two anthropogenic disasters alone still define the entire world today. Now factor in World War I, the European colonization of the Americas, all the changes of Chinese dynasties throughout the millennia, and the great African wars of recent times. Even now, many people are born in places with authoritarian governments. They know that brainwashing and ideological control can overtake generations of people. The purges in communist China killed 49 to 78 million people. The Soviet purges were likely worse, with 23 million killed in the Ukrainian famine from 1932 to 1939 alone. An attentive reader might want to think about how recently these famines occurred when they consider why Ukrainians are fighting against Russia so hard. They also might want to consider how unbelievably bad the coming winter will be for many poor people all over the world. Ukraine produces 1/3 of the world's wheat. So for every person who is afraid of death from disease, those who fear misuse of power also have a big pile of corpses on their side of the analysis. And the misuse of power currently feared is also rooted in our fear of mutation and death. Consider these small but terrifying examples. Thalidomide, originally intended as a tranquilizer and then later used to treat nausea and morning sickness in mothers. It caused horrific birth defects in children. It would cause limbs to malform and left 10,000 infants worldwide with limb malformations known as phocomelia. And while there are some truly absurdly high and utterly false reports of medical deaths per year, it is still likely that 22,000 people a year in the US, with about 7,000 of those in people not already near the end of their natural lives. And now consider fears closer to the COVID pandemic. Perhaps the most terrifying case of medical screw-up is that early efforts to vaccinate for polio in Africa in 1957 and 59 were poorly organized and likely helped spread HIV, ultimately creating the modern HIV pandemic. So while fewer people are going to be triggered by fear of misuse of power by medical screw-ups than fear of COVID itself, many people will be. This is especially true of populations that experience evil medical experimentation. This includes people from Africa who remember past screw-ups. This includes Black people in the United States in relation to the Tuskegee syphilis study. This includes Filipino people who remember the Dengvaxia controversy. So we have a world full of people who have had the collective unconscious fears triggered for two very real reasons that have been shared by all of humanity. And we are all descended from the survivors. So every one of these is a fear that is now built right into our genetic and protein structure, because throughout human history, every one of these things has resulted in complete ruin of people and cultures that did not survive. If you know people who want to mask, lock down, and take vaccine boosters regularly until the end of time, understand that no matter how irrational their responses seem to be, they are reacting to a rational fear. And if you know people who do not want to scan, mask, take vaccine boosters, and who want to go out in groups, understand that no matter how irrational their responses seem to be, they are reacting to a rational fear. Both sets of fears tied to real world total ruin, to societies trapped in lies, poverty, and misery, sometimes for centuries. And a wise policymaker does whatever they can to avoid pitting one group of scared, panicky humans against another group of scared, panicky humans. And the best way to do this is to avoid any chance of choosing one of these groups and making them first-class citizens over the other group of second-class citizens. Persuade, cajole, and irritate, but do not force. This is because some people simply will not obey your commands. And if you resort to force, where does it end? We have already seen pitting children against each other, segregation, firing people, putting them in ghettos, suspending civil rights, starting martial law. These effects only abated because at this point, almost everyone knows that we will all get COVID. And the new versions are a lot less lethal than the old versions. But remember these lessons, because this apocalypse is not over. All you have to do is buy gas, pay your heating bill, or go to a grocery store to be reminded of that fact. When you suggest policy on any topic, do not pit people who are backed into a corner by their collective unconscious against each other. That's it. This has been Horizons of Thought. Please click subscribe or go to the donor box link to support this channel. I will see you in a while.